Well, happy Tuesday to everybody. Did y'all take communion on Sunday? Was that a little weird? First time I've ever done communion during a service that was held online. It was just kind of weird. Don't know what you guys were able to use for communion. Deb managed to find some honey wheat bread, a piece of crust, and we split that in half. And didn't have any grape juice, so we ended up using red Powerade. Kind of appropriate though. Jesus certainly gives us the power to live day by day, and so that's what we used. I'd love to hear what you guys were using for communion. Heard a lot of interesting stories. Some folks that were using frosted mini wheats as their communion bread. Somebody else using Cheez-Its, and we do what we need to do. Now, some people might go, well, that's really offensive. Why wouldn't we just use the bread and wine like Jesus did? Well, sometimes you don't always have the things that you would ordinarily want to have in a time like that. And God knows our hearts, and He can use anything. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But just real quick, a communion story that I'll never forget. I was at a church in the Pittsburgh area, and it was my very first youth retreat with them back in the fall of 1986. And we went to breakfast the first morning at their retreat, and a kid came up to me after breakfast. He said, well, did you tell them to get the communion stuff? And I said, yeah, it's ordered. We're all set. He goes, are you sure? I said, yeah. And so we went to lunch, and as soon as lunch was over, he said, did you tell them about the communion stuff? Are you sure we're getting it? I said, yeah, I'm sure we're getting it. And I was kind of surprised that a high school boy or a middle school boy was asking about stuff like this. But he was very persistent. And we went back for dinner that night, and he said, did you get the communion stuff? I said, yeah, I have it. I said, we're all set for communion night. He goes, oh, good. And so when the weekend was over, I was talking to our missions director, who was our speaker for the week, and I'm like, any idea why this guy was asking about the communion stuff all week? And he goes, yeah, he said, I figured you'd find out sooner or later. But last year, I was in charge of the retreat for the youth, and when we got up there, I completely forgot to order the communion stuff. And so when it came time for communion, we didn't have anything. And he said, so we dug through the trash, because we had pizza for dinner, and we found some pizza crusts in pizza boxes in the trash, and we had to use pizza crusts and Pepsi. And I think he was really afraid that God wouldn't honor that, and so we had to do something really weird, and he never forgot it, and obviously I haven't either. But God honors what we have to give. If you watched the Ten Commandments the other night, you saw the story of Moses. And Moses didn't have much, but he had God on his side, and God gave him a staff. And with that staff, he was reminded that he had the power of God with him at all times. And so God did great things with Moses and that staff. You look at Joshua and how they took over Jericho. All Joshua had was a bunch of marching shoes and a trumpet, and the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. We see the story of Jonah on his way to Nineveh. All he had was an unused and unwanted cruise ticket. But God placed him in the belly of that well, and when he vomited him out on the shore, Jonah was ready to share the word of God, and people's lives were changed. And so God honors what we have. And so that's what I want you to remember today. Whatever we can give God, God can do incredible things with it. And so keep that in mind. And next time we have communion, who knows what we're going to have. Try and make it as whatever's going to be honoring to God that you have, and allow that to happen. But I hope you're surviving through this week, that you're doing well with your online work. Be with those teachers and those cafeteria ladies that are working in your house, and making sure you get good meals every day. And just love on them, and just love on each other during this week. And we'll touch base with you again in a couple days. I love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.